One other thing that you have heard a little bit about today, but you knew I was going to have a say on this, is more proof about how much money this government spends. This government is spending more than any government at any time because it's getting more tax than any government at any time. As Chris Richardson explained a few minutes before our show started with Shari, basically, because of things like the iron ore and coal price, they've been able to enjoy a return that says, oh, we've balanced the budget, despite the fact there's a plan for a budget deficit for the next 40 years. But they love spending other people's money. And then they turn around and say that under this government, we have created 1 million jobs. You've created a lot of jobs in the public sector, but you don't create the jobs in the private sector. It's the people who take the risk to go and employ another human being. They pay for it. Of course, all these people who've never been in the public sector, in the private sector. Oh, no, Prime Minister was a bank teller for a few months in 1981. So, one of us. Government spending is now $195 billion. What have we got to show for it? We have a household recession that is a world of pain. I'll get to that in a moment. But we also have the best part of $1 trillion in debt. Oh, but haven't they saved money, Paul? No. Chalmers has spent $60 billion more than he has saved. He has damaged the budget. Now, while the government gets to say, we're great because we have a budget surplus, and we're great because the economy is growing by 0.1% or 0.2%. The average Australian, the per capita numbers, show that Australians have been going backwards, and not for a couple of months. This has been now happening for 6 consecutive quarters. Literally, over and over and over again, for the best part of a year and a bit, we have been in a recession in the real world in Australia, while the government turns around and says, no, everything's fine, everything's completely great. Don't worry, the Teals will prop us up. We brought potatoes. We know the Heartbreak Hotel. Well, what is really fascinating here is once you actually start to look into all of this, the reality is that while the government wants to tell you there is no recession, the reality is that there is when it comes to the economy. There are charts in a second that I'll explain all of this to you. But you see, this government is going to just frankly gaslight you. A little bit like that person in your life who tells you that when they borrow your car, they use all of the fuel, and you know you filled it up before you gave it to them. When they hand it back to you with the fuel light on, they go, no, mate, that's why I found it. They think you're so stupid that you will just forget that you put the fuel in the car the day before. You will completely forget your own circumstances of the past 3 years. You will not dare vote them out of government because Australians, they don't do that. We'd have to look way back into history and where we're about tomorrow and the Yellow Brick Road and 275. Which means you get garbage like Chris Bowen. Again, that historic figure who went into the parliament last week and actually had the balls to say this.
The inflation figures released by the ABS this week showed a 35% reduction in energy prices, the biggest fall in energy prices ever recorded in Australian history.
Because the government's spending billions of dollars to pay the power companies not to pass the increased charges on. It's completely artificial. And because of that artificial attempt to make power prices look like they have gone down, the overall inflation number looks like it has gone down. However, a whole bunch of stuff is way higher than the government ever wants to look at. So they look at the averages, the headlines, they assume that you're too silly, too busy, too easily distracted by, oh, look, a puppy. That you don't pay attention to your own life circumstances. That despite the fact that you're struggling, or certainly you know people that are struggling, and they have for now 3 Christmases in a row and 3 million people are this close to homelessness. No, everything's fine. It's all rosy. Now, tomorrow they'll tell us another BS picture about how Australia's economy is growing by 4/5 of bugger all. But the reality is the per capita recession will be continuing. And for the people who live outside of the Canberra bubble, who decide to borrow money, mortgage their house, to start their own business, many of them are just hitting the wall.